14th. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Mr. Alexander.
Thank you, Madam President. Today is the day and time that we scheduled a public hearing on a petition that was filed by Ladislao and Theodora Tompa. It's a petition to vacate a portion of James Street. And just so the folks in the audience are aware, there's basically two ways to vacate a road under the Borough Code. The Borough Council can do it on its own petition, or a resident can file a petition and request that a roadway or a portion of that roadway be vacated. And that's what Ms. Tompa did, and under the Borough Code, we're required to convene a public hearing to consider that petition, and then if council's in approval with the petition, pass an ordinance that would in fact vacate that portion of the roadway in question. And with that being said, we're going to move forward and call upon the applicant, the appellant, petitioner, to bring forward their case. Mr. Montgomery?
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Thank you, council. My name is David Montgomery, attorney for the Tompas, and appreciate the opportunity to bring this petition before council and put on our case. I have some pictures and some exhibits that I'd like to hand out to council. I think these will give you an overview and provide some context while I'm talking and while Ms. Tompa is addressing council. May I approach?
Certainly.
Thank you. Hope I have enough copies for the members.
Thank you. There's one here, sir.
Oh, I start down there.
You could share.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right, I have one more.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. Now, what I've handed to you are pictures of the exterior of the Tompa property located on James Street. And in the foreground is the area or the portion of James Street that we are petitioning this council to vacate. And I'm going to have Ms. Tompa come up and going to ask her some questions about these photographs, and then ask you to enter these into the record. And I hope this will give you an idea of what we're asking for tonight. Ms. Tompa?
Mr. Montgomery, before you do that, can we have Ms. Tompa sworn in?
Yes.
You do swear that the testimony shall give in this cause being heard is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Yes.
Ms. Tompa, I have a photograph in my hand, and I'll show it to council. It has a white automobile. Does everyone see that picture? Ms. Tompa, can you identify this photograph?
Sure, this is the front of our house.
Did you take this photograph?
I took this photograph
When did you take the
30
photograph?
minutes ago.
30 minutes ago.
Yes.
Okay, and what's depicted in the photograph with the car in the foreground?
So there's the car, the light pole, Duquesne light pole that we moved when we built the addition, which is the structure above the two-car garage. That was in 2002. The tree, there are two trees, the evergreen and the maple.
Okay, and there's a porch
Oh, the
on the
porches.
right side that you can see there? Okay, and let's take a look at the second photograph. I'm directing Ms. Tompa's attention to the photograph with the single-story structure on the left side. Did you take this photograph?
I took that photograph also 30 minutes ago approximately.
Okay, and what does this photograph depict?
So from the edge of the road, it's hard to see, but there are rocks bordering the edge of the road. And
Well, hang on a
plants.
second. Let me interrupt you for a
Sure.
second. In the foreground, there is a paved surface.
That's-
What is that paved surface?
That is the end of James Street that is also was the end of James Street.
Okay,
Paved-
so
the
that-
paved portion of James Street.
All right, thank you. Okay, and then there's the paved portion of James Street, and then that stops with a grassy portion?
Grassy portion and garden. We have berry bushes and tomatoes and flowers.
Okay,
Grapes.
and there's a white structure to the
white-
left? What is
yes.
that white structure?
So the white structure is the garage the garage that we requested. When we purchased the house, we came to council and asked that we could continue to use the garage structure as the previous owner did.
And is that also a boathouse?
It's a boat, yeah. Yes, we keep boats in that shed.
Let me interrupt for a moment, and I want to hand out our petitions, and these have more exhibits, and in particular, I'd like to look at a survey that will give you the official recorded view of the property and put these photographs in context. Ms. Tomper, are you familiar with the petition to vacate portion of James Street that we filed?
Yes, yes.
And within the portion, or the petition, there are certain exhibits, correct?
Yes.
And one of the exhibits is a survey under B, Exhibit B. Give everybody a moment to get to Exhibit B, which is the survey. Ms. Tompa, do you recognize Exhibit B?
Yes, Exhibit B is the survey we had put together with Gen 3 surveying for the purpose of this request.
Okay. Now, on the survey, you referred, when we were looking at the photograph, to the one-story white structure. Does that structure appear on the survey?
It does. It is labeled block and frame shed.
Okay, and does the survey show where the record border of James Street exists on the easterly side of James Street?
Yes, so right-of-way line at the top of the page on the, it's oriented so that the B is readable normally. It'd be the left side, the right-of-way line. That is the property, that's the property line.
And is this the line you're referring to, Ms. Tompa?
Yes, yes it
And
is.
that line goes through the one-story garage?
It does.
And would you agree with me that about 80% of that garage, or even 90%, is within James Street right away?
Yes.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask one favor and ask you to stand on that side of Dory so that she's looking towards the court reporter when she's...
Oh, all right. I'm
We're good.
All right.
Thank you.
So in addition to the one-story garage, what other structures are within the James Street right-of-way? Using the survey, can you tell council?
Sure, so from left to right, the ramp down to the dock area, the two porches that were built in 2002, and the cellar doors that were there when we bought the house. I'm sure they were original to the house.
Is there a concrete patio extending from your garage
Yes,
on the right side of your house into James Street?
yes, at the new addition on the corner, the part on the right, there's a concrete driveway,
Okay.
patio.
And that's actually indicated on the survey. It says concrete drive, does it not?
Yes.
Okay. And one interesting thing about this property, this is zoned commercial, is it not?
It is zoned commercial.
Okay, so the residential structure that you live in is zoned commercial, and it's actually built to the property line.
That's
Is that correct?
That's why we were allowed to build the property.
Well, okay, so the answer to my question is yes, it was built to the
Yes.
property line.
Yes.
Okay, and so when you bought the property, when did you buy it?
1997.
When you bought it in 1997, did this porch exist that has an X indicated that's within James Street right-of-way? Did that exist?
No.
Did the concrete patio, which is built within the portion of James Street, exist?
No.
Did the garage, the boathouse structure, the one-story white boathouse structure, did that exist when you purchased the property in 1997?
Half of it did. Yes.
The answer is yes.
Half of it.
Well, the answer to my question is yes. Part of it
Part of
existed.
it existed, yes.
Okay, and then the walkway dock existed as well, didn't it?
It existed, yes.
Okay,
Not as large, but yes.
Okay.
Not as wide. That's why.
all right. When you purchased your property in 1997, what was the condition of the hatched area?
It was grass,
It was all grass?
just grass.
Were there any trees within that area?
Yes.
And where were the trees located when you purchased the property?
There was one tree at the edge of the house in the grass.
Within the James Street area?
It died and we paid for it to come down. It would be right here. So on this photo, it would have existed right here. It was as large as the other maple tree.
As the other maple tree
Yeah.
indicated in the photograph with the white vehicle. Is that right?
In fact, it's noted on the building permit, the second tree.
All right, we'll get there.
Okay.
All right, so when you purchased this property in 1997, did you take any steps to improve it with additions or enlargements of your property?
Yes,
You did.
at various points, at various times, yes.
I would like you to take a look at Exhibit D, which is part of your petition. I'll give council a moment to turn to Exhibit D. Can you describe for council what is Exhibit D?
Exhibit D is a building permit application. It was dated July 31st, 1997, and it was to extend laterally the existing building shed, building garage, towards the river to be able to accommodate rowing boats.
Okay, let me stop you there. So you're saying that Exhibit D was an application to Verona Borough
Yes.
for the enlargement of the white structure that appears in this photograph
Yes.
on the left?
Yes.
And incidentally, Mr. Alexander, can we mark this photograph of the white structure as Exhibit I think petition exhibit?
The one without the house in it, or the...
Without the house, yes, sir, with the
Yes.
white garage. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned a date, and I don't see it on the sheet.
It's the next page.
Oh,
I'm sorry. The building permit application is three pages.
So that permit was to enlarge the white structure that appears on Exhibit I.
Yes.
And how were you enlarging the white structure that appears on Exhibit I?
We enlarged the structure to be longer towards the river. We did nothing to the front. So instead of, instead of 15 feet, it was about 30 feet. It's very hard. We extended it 17 feet. It's hard to read it on the third page of the building permit application, but 17 feet from one corner and 14 feet from the other corner.
So we saw from the survey that, for the most part, this structure is located on James Street right of way,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Now, your enlargement did not increase the encroachment into the James Street right-of-way, did it?
Correct,
In fact, your enlargement just went straight back laterally to the river,
correct.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Who did the work to enlarge the garage?
My father's a mason and contractor, passed away a few years ago, but he, my husband, and I'm an architect, so collectively we did the work.
And how long did the work take to enlarge the garage?
6 weeks.
And was that 6 weeks of sustained labor?
Yes, my husband and father worked on it full-time.
And getting back to the application, could you just tell us whether that was approved by the Borough of Verona?
Yes, on Exhibit E, the building permit was issued on August 11th, and then when work was complete, there was a certificate of occupancy. Is that in this? There is a certificate of occupancy also issued.
Okay. Do you have an estimate of the value of the labor and materials that you put into that structure back when you put in 6 weeks of work?
I think we calculated about $4,000 worth of materials, and maybe if that we paid for labor, maybe another $4,000 or $6,000.
Okay, that was back in 1997?
Correct.
Okay. On the survey, you mentioned some other structures that are in the James Street right-of-way. Can you, using the photograph with the white vehicle in it, and I'd like to mark this as Exhibit J.
So, right...
Hang on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Using Exhibit J, could you
Yes.
please go through and tell council what structures are located within the James Street right-of-way? Just take them one at a time.
From the tree, it's in the right-of-way.
All right.
I guess it's not a structure. The porch above the car,
Let me stop you there. There's a porch above the car. When was the porch above the car constructed?
in 2002 or 3, we got a variance. Mr. Provenzo was on the board, at the zoning board at the time, that approved the variance to have the porch above the garage and the porch at the main house.
Okay, when you say the porch at the main house, do you mean the porch that appears behind the tree?
Correct.
The large mature tree?
Yes.
In Exhibit I, or Exhibit J?
Yes,
Is that a covered porch?
it is a covered porch.
And that is a covered porch that was built within that portion of James Street that you're seeking to vacate?
Yes,
And that covered porch is a structure that you built pursuant to municipal approvals?
yes,
And you actually had a variance to
Yes.
build that structure?
yes, I saw it in it's in an exhibit. Not sure, it's H. Yeah, H. In 2000. And then the porches and the addition were built in 2002.
Could we take a look at Exhibit G for a moment?
G?
Exhibit G in your packet?
H, I'm sorry.
Right, and just take a moment and tell us what is Exhibit G in the petition?
Exhibit G was the record of the meeting that was held on September 6, 2000, to approve the request we had to extend the porches, the new porches, onto the right-of-way, because that's what it was for.
And to back up a moment, can you describe for council what is Exhibit E?
Exhibit E is the building permit. I called it a different letter, I'm sorry. So Exhibit E is the building permit that was provided on August 11th to us to be able to extend the garage, shed, boathouse, whatever we want to call it, to perform the work.
And who did the work building the porches that were built pursuant to the variance indicated on Exhibit G?
The porches and the addition that includes the 2 garages and the stories above were done by a contractor, Lockery Contracting, in 2002, 2001 or 2002.
Do you have an estimate for the value of the porches that were built pursuant to the variance attached as Exhibit G?
Just the porches in 2002, approximately $4,000 or $5,000.
You mentioned also, when you were looking at the survey, that there is a concrete patio built in the right-of-way. Could you describe the patio for council, please?
The patio or the garage driveway?
Well, the garage driveway or patio. It's a large concrete slab, is
It's
that
22 feet wide, and it extends from the edge of the house, which is at the property line, to the road, or to the paved portion of James Street.
Okay, and who put that in?
That was under the GC, the general contractor, Lockery Contracting. I don't remember the sub who did the work.
And what year was that put in?
2002, 2001?
You also mentioned a utility pole that's actually within the right-of-way of James Street. Would you agree with that?
It is in the right-of-way of James Street,
And what
on
does
the
that-
property line.
And what does that utility pole serve?
Duquesne Light. It's a structural tension wire. We had to have it moved so we could build the addition.
Okay, and when was that done?
When was the pole moved? 2001. The telephone pole was moved in 2001 before construction could begin.
And this was all pursuant to municipal approvals.
Absolutely, yes.
What other uses do you put that portion of James Street, which appears in the survey as a hashed area? What other uses do you put to it?
Well, we've used it as our yard since boat storage, our dogs are there, my son. We use it as our yard. We have a garden, there's tomato plants, peppers, flowers. There's a dog caged area that we sometimes use. If it's very small, we'd like to expand that, make a nice fence around the property.
Okay. Going back to the survey, there appears to be some structures that extend down to the river. Can you describe what those are?
So there's a significant drop in elevation from the shed floor, garage floor, to the river bank. And it had, in order to safely walk a boat from the shed to the river, there's a fixed ramp system that extends from the edge of the shed to the floating docks.
Is it fair to say that the docks depicted on Exhibit B on the survey, a portion of those docks extend into the James Street right-of-way?
Yes, from the surveyor's ability to extrapolate information with the change in elevation, the edge of the dock on the southern side is very, very close to the edge of the paved portion, which is why the request is to the edge of the paved portion.
And in fact, the dock that immediately comes out of the boathouse,
That's on-
according to the survey, that's entirely on the James Street right-of-way, isn't that right?
Correct. According to the survey.
Do you pay Allegheny property taxes on your property?
Yes.
And do you know if you've been paying any Allegheny property taxes on the boathouse that's located within the James Street right-of-way?
Yes, we do. Our taxes increased in 1998, and without an assessment or any red flag. So I called to find out why, and they said it was because of the building permit issued in 97. And that was the only building permit that we requested and that was issued was for the garage and boat shed.
Okay, and can you take a look at Exhibit F
Yes.
to the petition?
Yes.
And you recognize this is an Allegheny County property record card?
Yes,
And,
I know this card.
And this is a two-page document.
Yes,
See on the second page, the county has referenced secondary structure, 30 by 17.
Yes.
You see that? And what do you understand that 30 by 17 structure to be?
I understand that not to be the house, but the boat shed or garage.
That's located within the James Street right-of-way.
Correct, mostly, yeah.
And you've been assessed and taxed on this since 1997.
97, 98, whatever year they bumped it up after that, yeah.
And you indicated that in 1997, that the hashed area of the survey was grassy area.
Yes,
Was there any asphalt on that portion of James Street?
none, no,
Was there any gravel on that portion of James Street?
no, it was grass.
Was there any indication whatsoever?
There were plants.
Well, hang on, please don't interrupt. Was there any indication whatsoever that the municipality had done any work within the hash portion of the survey?
No,
Who took care of the grass area after you purchased the property in 1997?
we took care of the grass.
You and your husband?
My husband and I, yes.
Did anybody else take care of the grassy area within the hash portion of the surveyed area of James Street?
No,
Has the municipality ever done anything to take care or maintain the hashed area of the portion of James Street since you purchased it in 1997?
they have not, no.
Could you take a look at Exhibit H to the petition and tell me what this Exhibit H is?
Exhibit H is a letter from my neighbor, Christine Davis, who lives at she used to live there. She lived there when we first moved there. She now lives in Oakmont, but she maintains her business, Christine Davis Consultants. And do you want me to read the letter?
Yes.
Okay. Dear Dory, this letter relates with your problem involving James Street from Penn Street to the Allegheny River in Verona. The problem involves a structure built by the owners within the James Street right-of-way on property at 157 James Street. Verona Borough gave the owners permission to build the structure about 19 years ago. To resolve the problem, Christine Davis Consultants, Inc. agrees on permitting the vacation of the blue portion of the James Street right-of-way. There was an attached map at that time that had it blue instead of hatched, from the edge of the paved road to the edge of the property at 157 James Street. See blue on attached map. This would eliminate the issue with the shed being on the right-of-way and the roadway. The portion of the right-of-way that is currently paved would remain unchanged and still be owned and maintained by the borough. In essence, nothing on CDC, Christine Davis Consultants, side of the street would change. This was written because at the time, in 2017, the borough had begun consideration of vacating the entire portion, and Christine Davis was not agreeable to the full vacation, and we then later learned that we could ask for a portion. But then, that's what the letter was for, and so she agreed to the portion.
Let me just
portion
clear up.
vacation.
Let me clear up one thing in this letter.
Yeah.
Your neighbor says that Verona Borough gave the owners permission to build this structure about 19 years ago. Is that accurate?
We did not build the entire structure, we only added on to the structure.
Okay, and you added
So that is
on-
not exactly accurate.
And you added on about 50%
About 50%.
towards the road.
Correct.
I'll just show you very briefly Exhibit A, which is, do you recognize what Exhibit A is?
It's a plan of lots dated back to 1873.
So this is just for council's background. This is what the plan of lots was when it was originally laid out in 1873.
Oh, Verona.
Verona, yeah.
And no house.
And there's no house, there are no structures at this time when this was built. I'd like to hand out a timeline, and we can mark this as Exhibit K. And I have some copies of this. This will just give council an overview of the critical events with respect to this property. Ms. Tompa, on this timeline, did you prepare this timeline?
I did prepare this timeline.
Okay. You refer in your timeline, in the third item down, to somebody named William Sherrick.
Yes, he owned the property before we did,
Okay.
from 1989 to 1997.
And do you know if he used the boathouse at all?
Yes, he used the shed as a boathouse, and he was the one who built the docks originally.
Okay. So, and it's your understanding he owned the property sometime between 1989 and 1997?
I did a title search, those were the years of his ownership.
Okay, so he built the dock somewhere in
Yes.
that period? Have you attempted to get insurance for the garage itself?
Yes, we have had the property insured the entire time we own it. We still have a mortgage on it. And it was 1 year when we changed insurance companies. It was 2016, when we changed insurance, that an insurance agent asked, why are you paying insurance on something that's not on your property? And that sparked the request back in 2016, when a few of the council members, Larry Seiler was the borough engineer at the time, and Mr. Kenna also joined us on the property. So my request began back in 2016.
Did you have an incident this year with a tree that fell into the garage?
Yes, a tree to the south side of the shed fell on the shed, the garage, and we took care of it. We had to take care of it. There were a lot of problems that day. July 4th, horrible day for Verona. So, the dam at the shed, big wind, and
Is that another reason why you'd like to get this situation cleared up?
it would be very helpful to be able to have ownership to take care of things properly.
And if you were ever to sell the property, you would want to have a clear title to whatever it is you're selling?
Yes. In 1997, William Sherrick said, yes, I've had use of this, the borough doesn't mind, we use it, its previous owner used it. But I came to council and asked specifically, before we purchased the property, it was a condition of sale actually in our sales agreement, that we would have use of the structure. And back then, 20 years ago, things were a little easier, loosey-goosey. Yes, you can use it. Here's a building permit. We pay taxes on it. I didn't think twice about it. We have use of it, that's fine. But we have use of it, we pay taxes on it. It's an ownership issue of that piece of land and that shed. That's what this boils down to. And we've maintained it, we've used it. A few years ago, 2 years ago maybe, there was a paving of James Street, and it ended at our house. They didn't go all the way down to the end. The borough doesn't even maintain the paved portion. There are other considerations to that end of the street. People don't park properly on it, and we just, if people shrug their shoulders, it's okay. But ownership and insurance and liability start to...
Those are all questions you'd like to clear up.
Things are different. Thankfully, now things are different in Verona now. So those are good things. But now this is time to to understand how do you define this piece of land?
Thank you. I don't have any other questions for Ms. Tompa. I'll open up to the council.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. Did you touch on every one of the exhibits?
I think I did.
I know you touched on Exhibit A, you touched on Exhibit B.
Is this it?
I'm not seeing.
I don't recall C being referenced.
Oh, what is Exhibit C?
Exhibit C is a map from 1914 that was provided to me by the surveyor. The surveyor who did the survey on Exhibit B to help me understand the history of the property, because he's a history buff on properties. He used to work for Senate Engineering. Provided this map of Verona from 1914, which shows the property then having a house and also a garage at the back of the yard. and in use. And from what I understand, that Thea Black also used that as a garage for her car. Who was the owner prior to William Sherrick.
So with that, Mr. Alexander, we'd like to move into evidence exhibits A through, I believe we're up to K. Thank you very
We
much.
should do D, we did E, F. Did we touch on G, the zoning hearing board decision?
Yes, Ms. Tomp identified that as the authority to build the porches and
Okay.
the extension.
Exhibits A, exhibits A through I, JK will be admitted. Does any member of the board have any questions of Ms. Tompa?
Craig, I have a question for you. Exhibit G, how many names or signatures have to be on that paper?
2, majority.
Is it? Because I noticed that Richard Shemp did not sign.
It probably didn't participate in the decision.
Thank you.
It would be a majority of the board, which is 2 out of 3.
Thank you.
Dr. Kirkner, do you have questions?
Yeah, I'm trying to get a sense on Exhibit B. Where is the road exactly?
The road is, may I approach? The road is the line that is at the edge of the hatched portion. So we're requesting to the edge of the road and this line.
Pardon me, may I help answer that question? Because I want to make sure we're very precise here. The road right-of-way is actually traveling through the one-story structure up here, and I think there is a line that says right-of-way line. Does everybody see that?
Oh, I see it.
So I'm not sure, did you want to know where the paved portion was or the right-of-way line?
I was just interested as it exists today
The road
on
or
this
the
picture.
right-of-way?
Where's the road?
The paved portion or the right-of-way?
The paved portion.
The paved portion, edge of pavement, the edge of pavement, and it turns.
Well, what is this then?
Gravel and plants, trees,
So the road ends here?
yes. The paved portion.
Yes, if you can picture James Street as it travels towards the river, it becomes less and less finished. And as you travel past that one-story garage, I think it's fair to say it starts to merge with the riverfront.
And at this edge of the shed, the drop is significant. So they're not topography lines, but at the edge of this shed, it's 15 feet down. It's very dangerous.
Could you explain that to all of us?
Which one?
What you just explained there?
Oh, sure. So,
Dory?
Yes.
Can you, let's
yeah.
hold this up high so everybody
For
can see it.
everybody.
And let's be real careful for the court reporters so we know what we're describing.
Yes.
Ms. Tompa is referring to Exhibit B, which is the survey of the property. And the question is, let me start it out this way. The hashed portion of Exhibit B, Ms. Tompa, is it fair to say that that is a grassy surface?
yes.
Okay. Now, the portion of James Street where it's the edge of pavement, you see
Yes.
that line?
Yes.
So everything to the south of that is to one degree or another paved.
Yes.
And would it be fair to say that that paved portion of James Street is sort of a choppy asphalt surface?
Yes.
And it's also fair to say that hasn't been improved in, fair to say, decades?
Since I moved in.
Okay. And I think you were explaining to council earlier that from Penn Avenue upwards, that area has actually been resurfaced.
Yes.
But your point was that the area from Penn Avenue to the river, that the borough hasn't done anything that you can tell with respect to that otherwise paved portion.
Correct.
And it's also fair to say that once you approach the end of the garage area towards the river, the asphalt pavement stops and it becomes just sort of a vegetated area, right?
The trees, yes.
There's
Yes.
no pavement going down to the river?
No.
Okay.
Not from the. The only way to get to the river is through the shed on that walkway. It's the only safe way to get down there.
So the area traveling down the river becomes sort of wild.
And there's no fence.
I'm sorry. From the shed to the edge of pavement, how far would you say that is, feet-wise?
From the shed to the edge of pavement, I think you asked that question the last time we came informally to request. And I believe the surveyor said, because he was present last time, he said 7 feet.
7 feet.
And I explained, I think,
Is that
last time.
from here or is that from here?
It's from,
here.
I'm not sure. But the line extends to capture the end of the dock.
But yeah, my question is just from the edge of the block and frame shed to the edge of the pavement. So you're saying that's 7 feet?
Yes, and that was in a council meeting, so if there are minutes, you could check. But I think that was 7 feet.
Mr. Councilman, I think just visually...
Yeah, I was looking at
You can
that.
see that, but it doesn't provide any dimensions on exhibit B, or I'm sorry.
D.
B.
That's Jay.
Well, this picture is J.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Any further board members have any additional questions of Ms. Pompa? Janet?
Story, from what I understand, there's a storm sewer that runs.
Yes. The storm sewer is located under the paved portion. I would say it's exactly in the middle of the street, of the right-of-way. So where you see the dashed line, and that was the reason why Ms. Davis was resistant to have the full area vacated last year, when that was a consideration, because she was concerned about access to that storm. It's actually not a storm drain, it's an underground river. Indian Creek was diverted above the old Borough Building, and it now goes underground and exits at that storm drain. Because, yes.
Are you saying the dotted line where it says C/L?
Center line, yes.
Okay.
So you're saying there's no sewer there, the water
It's
just
not a-
flows right out?
It's not a sewer, it's a storm line, underground, and it's about 5 feet tall. Many people have climbed in that storm. And I see some nodding of heads. So that is in Verona, that's under the paved portion.
Is there anything of Verona's under the portion that you're seeking to have vacated?
Not of Verona's now. There's, I think, telephone lines, but that would, so whatever that right of easement language that would exist for the borough, we would be willing happily to take on that easement.
So am I correct? I've highlighted the portion with the little lines going through it. That's the portion that you're asking to be vacated?
Correct.
So is a very small portion of the garage or boathouse on your property?
Yes. It always, yes. From even the original structure. And if you look at the map from 1914, it was drawn on the property.
So,
And it was always in use by the owner of that property
so it was drawn on the property
in
and
1914, but
but
built
it
off the
kind of
property.
magically moved.
We don't know.
We don't know.
She knows that it was there when she bought the house in 1997.
Yes.
And Mr. Sherrick had built those docks sometime during his ownership. So we don't know if that 1914 map is accurate, and we don't know if the garage was ever moved at some time in those 7 or 8 years. That could have happened, we don't know.
So there's some blanks that exist that it's impossible to know what went on back in 1914, as far as we can tell. Why, I mean, we understand what happened with your small porch to your house, and the extension that you made of the block and frame shed was vertical toward the river, not widthwise into the right-of-way. But that's been standing there for a while, and we don't know how that came to be. If they thought it was on the property, and then they decided it wasn't on the property, it was on the right-of-way, we just have no way of ever knowing that.
We don't have any information about that.
Okay.
I did research beyond the census report, but I found 1940 Bethia Black owned that property, and I understand that Bethia Black used that shed.
And where does that understanding come from?
Local residents that remember her living there and using that garage.
So, that's fine. I mean, just establishing that it's a mystery, and there's no way to really know.
No.
Okay.
Gina, do you have anything further? Matt, did you have anything?
I was just gonna mention the storm sewer, making sure that we had enough right-of-way on the storm sewer.
Do you agree with Ms. Tompa that the storm sewer goes down the center of James Street and is not on her property?
It's pretty close to the center. AJ and I looked at it not long ago. I couldn't be exact, but it is fairly close to the center.
Mr. Prevents, anything further?
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Carpenter?
Good for now.
Madam President?
Everything that I questioned has already been asked.
Is there any person from the public that would like to either ask questions of Ms. Tompa or present any comment or testimony of their own with regard to whether this is a good thing or not so good thing? Yes, sir. Come forward, please, state your name. We're going to have the court reporter swear you in since it is a public hearing.
Okay. Michael Forbeck, 624 3rd Avenue, Verona.
And spell your last name for us.
Forbeck.
You do swear that the testimony you shall give in this cause being heard is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm Mike Forbeck. I'm the chair of the Rec Board, Parks and Rec, we all know. We know how Verona is exceedingly growing. The riverfront properties are becoming very, very valuable. It's no surprise. I mean, there's hidden gems. New folks as well as existing folks are finding the hidden treasures that's going on in Verona. In particular, the most recent thing that happened, which we all are aware, is we received a grant for a trail feasibility study that's connecting Verona, Oakmont, Penn Hills, and Plum. One of the access points of this feasibility study will be through this easement property. Now, I'm not saying that.
It's hard. If you just keep your voice up all the time, sorry. Thank you.
One of the access points that will be explored is access through this easement property. So it is a concern for us. I think it's important, one, that Verona consider that any giving away of riverfront property is a concern for the citizens of Verona, and two, that you consider that feasibility study access to be part of this. I mean, perhaps there might be some sort of agreement in lieu of giving away the property, of having some sort of access agreement with the Tom Pitts or future owners, that we can have some sort of mutual understanding rather than being in question. And that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Montgomery, do you have anything to ask Mr. Forbeck? Okay.
Yeah, just one or two questions.
Real quick. Folks that are coming in right now, the Borough Council meeting's not starting yet. We're still in the middle of a public hearing. So we're going to need to have you quiet. You're welcome to come in. You just have to be quiet till we finish this hearing up. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. Just very quickly, sir, there are other access points that you think may be studied for this project?
We're hoping that there's going to be multiple access.
Multiple.
At least 3.
And the study hasn't begun yet?
No, it's not even awarded yet.
All right. That's all I have.
Received the grant.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to comment on this application? 1 second, sir. I think this lady's coming up real quick. Yeah, well, we're getting close to meeting time, so I'm going to ask that everybody who wants to offer public comment, raise your hand. And let's stand and be collectively sworn in.
Okay, do you swear that the testimony you shall give in this cause being heard is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you.
Hi, Laura Jacko, 437 North Avenue. Jacko, like jack-o'-lantern. And I just wanted to offer my support of the Recs Board recommendation. I think that this is definitely something that should be taken into consideration. It sounds like there were just maybe some bad decisions that were made in the past, and maybe we can make some sort of an agreement going forward, but anything that's done should be done with consideration of the community at large.
Thank you.
David Matlin, 722 Bruneau Street. I am also with Mike on the rec board. I've been working with Mike on the trail project, looking at the feasibility study. We presented earlier this year and got support and sign off from council to apply for a grant for the feasibility study. I believe that was in March, April timeframe. It would be planned for late this year, early next year. There's no guarantees as to which, corridors or routes it would identify, but I think it would be reasonable to do due diligence and evaluate public uses such as a trail before any decision to vacate it would be finalized. So that's all I have. I agree with Mike's earlier comments.
Thank you. Thank you. Sir?
My name is John Wiesner. All right, so I live, W-I-E-S-N-E-R.
Thank you.
I live on 514 Penn, which is within a block of that space on the river. I bought that property a year and a half ago, and I paid a premium to be on the river. I'm not necessarily against them sort of annexing that property into their own, but it seems unfair that they bought a property that didn't own riverfront space, and now they're trying to gain access to something that they have been allowed to use, but really belongs to the community. And if there's a community use, that should outweigh their own personal benefit, because they didn't buy that. And so they've been allowed that. And again, I may not be against the whole thing in the bigger principle, but I only found out about this today. And I'm just saying, these riverfront properties are increasing in value. As somebody said, it's a hidden gem. And I don't think that the city, the borough, should be too willing to give that away when there could be some community benefit to the whole thing. That's it.
Thank you.
Just one question. Are you aware, sir, that the Tompas do have riverfront access right now?
I understand.
And they already have it. No, their residence has riverfront access. Do you understand that?
But do they own that property?
Yes. Yes, they do.
The river, all the way to the water.
They own this property.
We own to the low water
Okay, so
line.
I have not been the benefit of seeing all these exhibits. I just found out about it. So I may be misunderstanding what's going on.
Fair enough.
Okay.
No other questions.
Thank you. Any further board comment? Matt, anything further from Senate engineers?
No comment.
Okay, this time we'll close the public hearing on this matter. We do have a quick public hearing on another matter that will take about 30 seconds. But Mr. Montgomery, I'm not certain whether the council will consider this at the regular meeting at 7 o'clock or maybe at a future date at the next meeting. We're going to discuss that real brief between meetings.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Alexander. Thanks for the opportunity to present. I'll just say, just very briefly, this is an odd property. It's built to the property line in a commercial district. And I think that led over the years to all this development of this hashed area. by her predecessor and her, and that's kind of how I think we got here. So I just want to point out the unique nature of the property. Thank you for your attention.
We're going to go right into the next one. Yeah, a motion to adjourn the public hearing on the petition of...
Vacating a portion of James Street.
Yeah.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn the petition to vacate the portion of the James Street?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Dr. Carpenter. Do I have a second? Second. Second by Mrs. Provenza. Are there any questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passed.
In 1 second. We have to convene this other public hearing, and then we're gonna continue it, and then you'll be done.
Okay, so I'm just taking the 30-second thing, but I'm not taking
Yes,
this?
that's correct.
So I can just quietly kind of back out.
Yeah.
Do you want a copy of the first hearing?
Oh,
You want to
not
let us know?
indicative deal.
Okay, should I take the exhibits? So after this little 30-seconder, I'm just going to back out quietly. You're sure? Okay.